Hey everyone, welcome back to Left Brain Liz. That's me, and today I'm going to open the art snacks that I got today. I actually got this on Saturday, but I'm posting this on Wednesday, so I think you get the idea. Anyway, so let's get to opening. All right. Okay. So usually when we get these, it comes with like a little card, like with what's in here. And let's see, currently it says that there's some watercolor in here. Okay, a brush, sketching pencil, and a micron pen with some bonus watercolor paper. And I'm assuming that's what this little guy is. It's more of like a little piece or a sample of watercolor paper. If you can tell, it's like the size of this bookmark. And then they always send a snack, and it's kind of funny because as I'm looking at this now, I just had this conversation with my husband about how I hate these. But I don't know, it says sweethearts on it, so maybe it's sweetheart flavor and not conversation hearts, because I hate those. They taste like chalk. But I don't know, he likes them, so I'll give them to him if that's what they are. And we got our little pretzel sticker, which I put on my art. And then here's all the goodies. So let's see here. They come wrapped up in this little tissue paper. Okay. Actually, it's funny. I just did a painting with this brand of watercolor. I saw it for sale at my local Dick Blick's. So I bought some. And I want to say it was like on sale about $7 a tube. So if we look at this here, it says that the watercolors combined retail is $23.50. These are series 1 is what it says on there. You can see that. Series 1 at the bottom. Or series. Which basically, if anyone is familiar with buying paint at a paint store, the series 1 is usually, not always, but it's a lot of times the cheapest one that's on there. So I'm going to venture to guess, if these not being on sale, probably about $20, at least at my local Dick Blick's. But still, that's a good deal because I got 2 of these, $20. The subscription is $25, so that's not including the brush I got, this micron pen, and this sketching pencil. So this brush is probably a nicer brush than I typically buy. It's kind of short. You can see how squat it is, but that's okay. It's probably got better hairs on it. Oh, they're always a little stiff in the beginning, but yeah. Definitely better than what I'm typically used to, because I buy cheapy things at Michael's, because I'm a cheapskate. I don't want to risk ruining that. Micron pens, I gotta be honest, I don't know how much these typically run. This is the Micron brand, and they're not like a cheap brand, but I don't think they're terribly expensive. I think it says on here $2.89. That's probably about right. I guess it's saying this brush is $10 or $9.95. And the sketching pencil, 95 cents, which is probably also about right. So I'd say they're about on. This is a Faber-Castell sketching pencil, which I'm not sure what I typically use. So I don't know, give it a try. So what I'll end up doing is I will come up with something and watercolor on this little bookmark size piece of watercolor paper. And I got to think about that probably overnight and figure out what I'm going to do on that. But here is this month's Art Snacks box. So 2 watercolor colors. I've got this in neutral tint, which almost to me looks like black. Let's see here. I'm glad it's not lamp black though, because I seriously literally just bought that. So we'll see. That's probably more of like an ivory black. And then this Cenarius blue. I don't know what that is. It's blue. So, yep. All right. Well, that's that. It says a combined retail. Oh, I guess it doesn't give you a total on here, but anyway, so what they're saying is $23.50 for the watercolor, $10 for the brush, $1 for the pencil, $2.89 for the pen, and then a bonus item, this little piece of watercolor paper. I'd say going based on these prices, it's definitely worth a $24.95 subscription. I'd say the watercolors are probably a little bit cheaper than what they're saying, but still a pretty good deal because they're not cheap. They're, you know, probably about $7 a piece or $8 a piece. Anyway, so yeah, I'm going to create something on this bookmark, and stay tuned for that. Okay, on to the drawing portion. So I am going to use only the materials that were in the box. So that is my pencil, my brush, my pen, my 2 tubes of paint, and this square of or rectangle of paper. I've already done a preliminary sketch. You probably can't see it because it's super light. I don't know if you can see that. It's 2 little feathers. There's not a whole lot that you can do on this kind of paper, or this tiny little piece of paper. Now, I noticed that there's a little watermark on the paper. It says it has an A on it, and I've never used watercolor paper that has that, so my initial assumption is that it's Arches paper, which I've never used because it's so incredibly expensive, and it's a really thick piece of paper, so it makes me think it might be Arches, but I'd be surprised if they'd be cutting pieces of Arches paper to include in their box, but I don't know, maybe they are. So anyway, I used the Faber-Castell Gold Faber pencil to sketch this out. It's a 2H, as you can see. Can you see that better? Which means, like, if you're not familiar with that, that means it's a harder lead. So in the middle is, like, for me, usually an F or an HB. And as you get harder, the number increases on the H side, so it'll be like 2H, 3H, 4H, etc. The softer the lead, it's a B, so like 2B, 3B, 4B, and it gets harder and harder, and like the laydown is a lot thicker and darker. But this one, for this purpose, is a great pencil to include with a watercolor set, because when you're sketching out something for watercolor, you don't want it to be too dark. Otherwise, it'll show through your watercolor, and that would be... Or it could also bleed with the water, so you don't want that. So I've already pre-mixed out these watercolors. I got the blue and this, it's called neutral tone, and I don't know if you can tell, but it's kind of got like a little bit of a burgundy flavor to it, but it's mostly black. It's just that there's like a burgundy under hue. I don't know what to call that. But I got the raw paints here. I have like varying degrees of transparency, for lack of a better term. This one is less dilute, this one's more dilute, and same on this side. So anyway, that is what I'm going to use, and then afterwards I'm going to use the micro pen to do some, like, you know, touch-ups or whatever. Although I'm doing feathers, so feathers are meant to be delicate, and I don't know how that's gonna work with a pen, but whatever, it's okay. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and start. I'm gonna do a wash on the background here. Very light. I don't want it to be dark at all. And I'm using this blue color. And I've never really mastered the flat wash. Well, can't say never. I haven't been watercoloring my whole life, so we'll see. Maybe I'll eventually get it. But since this is such a light wash, I don't think it matters. So I have my work surface propped up on this box with a roll of like painter's tape, propping it up so that when I do this wash, gravity is taking my water bead downward so that it's not pooling in certain areas. Because the trick to a good flat wash is to have, in watercolor, is to have that flow, or I'm sorry, not to have it pool up and just have like the flat wash. And in order to do that, you need to be able to control the water somewhat, and that is done by gravity and various other things. But supposedly it's not too hard to get this flat wash, but for some reason I'm just not that good at it. Now these light colors I'm okay, because you can't really see much of a difference between the background and the color because it's so light. Okay, so this background, I'm using the light dilution of the blue color. Okay. I am going to let this dry so that whenever I do the feather, it's not going to bleed into that. And I'm going to use my handy dandy Pro Heater Heat tool, which I mentioned in another video before that these things get super hot because I use them to shrink wrap my soaps, and it needs to be able to basically shrink plastic, so it needs to be kind of hot. It's not like a regular hair dryer. So I got to be really careful on the paper because I can like singe the paper. I like this tool because not only does it work multiple ways for me, but it's quiet and it's quick because it's so hot. Okay, so now I'm going to go in with a little bit of a darker line here for the feather. And this is not that easy because to do like delicate details like this, you really kind of want like a small round brush. But they included this flat brush, which I love flat brushes, but not for this kind of detail work. I mean, it can be done, but... So this feather will be blue, and this one will probably be this like darker black color. So I'll go ahead and do my stem for the black one. Never painted feathers before, so this is interesting. The way I have these things shaped is, I have too much water on that. I have it so that like they're kind of curved like this, so the bulk of the feather will show at the bottom of this one and the top of that one, if that makes sense. I guess that'll just be a little wash because I couldn't really get in detail. That's okay. We'll fix that. With a little bit of a lighter. Mixed a little bit of my light dilution with my dark dilution here for the top part. I'm just leaving a little space in between the stem and the bulk. I don't know the technical terms for feathers. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. It's really hard to get those fine details with a flat brush, but maybe I can fix some of that up with my pen. We'll see. Plus another trick I learned is if you want to get like that multi-dimensional feel to some objects, you can like layer levels of transparency on your object. And I might do that here just to give it some depth. But you have to let the layers completely dry in between. Otherwise your effect will just bleed and not look like how you intended. Yeah, this is not easy. Probably should have picked something different to paint, but I guess I like to give myself too much of a challenge. Okay, let's dry again. Easy peasy. All right, so far it's looking pretty good. I'm gonna go over it with a little bit of another darker. Being very delicate with this. As delicate as I can with a square brush anyway. And don't get me wrong, this brush is great, but it is definitely not meant for fine lining. Oopsie. Actually, that looks kind of cool. The bottom part there was a little bit still wet, so when I put this darker color on it, bled down into there. And it looks okay to me, so I'm just gonna leave it. It looks like the blue color spreads a little bit more than the black, and not that there's anything wrong with that, it's just an observation. So it's harder for me to get that fine detail with the blue with this brush than the black. Or maybe I don't know, maybe I mixed them too differently. Since this is so light, I can still see bits of the pencil underneath, but it's not that noticeable where I care as much. This is an old cigar box that I have this propped up on from one of my old employers. I used to be a, surprisingly enough, I used to be a legal secretary, and I've been around because I'm a scientist clearly, but yeah, I was a legal secretary for a little while, and the lawyer that I worked for smoked cigars, and he pretty much couldn't do anything for himself. He was like, always needing me to do stuff for him, and I think he really took advantage of me. He was a nice guy, but I don't know, he just really took advantage. He even straight up told me one time that like he was only paying me $9 an hour to do what I did, and it was the most stressful job I've ever had in my life, and it was more stressful than my science job, which is pretty stressful. But yeah, he told me one time when talking about my degree and everything, he's like, "Man, we got you for a bargain." I was like, "Hey, thanks. Oh, that's great to know. I'm glad you feel that way." I mean, I think he meant it as a compliment, but he's so socially awkward that it came out like, I don't know. We had a little, we had our differences, and alas, I'm no longer there. If you couldn't tell. But one of the memories I have is this glorious cigar box, and I have many of them actually. I thought they looked kind of cool, so this is actually the underside of it. The top side is black and has this thing on it. Okay, I think I'm about done with the watercolor portion. I could do some splatter effects. Excuse me, I like to do that sometimes. I might do one more layer of this black. You'd think with as much as I've played with watercolors, I would figure this out by now, but it always seems to vex me, like whenever you're laying down the color, it looks so dark, and then once it dries, it lightens up significantly. But for some reason, I'm always like, oh, it's about done. And then it dries, and I'm like, oh, it's not. But that's okay. That's part of the learning process. Sorry, I have a tendency to mumble. I don't know if you heard me or not when I said that, but plus I have asthma, so I'm always coughing. I try not to do that too much, but it's just a way of life for me, so to speak. All right. I'm just delicately tapping this. I got some of the blue on there. Got a little bit the blue of the single dilution, but with the black I'll do the second dilution because it's a little bit darker. And I don't want it to overwhelm the image with splattering. Come on, there we go. Get a little in this corner too. All right. Okay, on to the pen. So first I'm going to dry this sucker. So much easier than just letting it air dry. All right. I know the tape doesn't matter, but I don't want to like transfer any of the water from this paint on the tape. Okay. So it looks like this Micron pen, I don't see a size on it. It says PN. I don't know if that means something. But if you look, you can see that it's actually kind of a thicker tip. It's not like a micron. It also has this like blue lettering on it that made me think it was a turquoise pen, but it's actually black, as you can see on the tip. So I'm not sure how I'm gonna do this, but let's just go for it. I'm gonna kind of accent the stem just a little bit. Not too much. Since these are delicate feathers, I don't want it to be like overwhelmed by ink. Just put a few little distinguishing marks, nothing too much. Because if I put too much in there, you won't see my overlays. Especially with the black one. The blue one I might be able to get away with maintaining delicacy. But maybe not. I don't know. Don't want to go overboard. Alright. I think I'm going to call that good. I don't want to put too much on there because, yeah. So, just going to initial that. Call it good. So I used everything in the box. I used the paper, the pen, the paints, the brush. And this is my end result. This was my easel. So this is my end result. Yeah, I like it. The working with the paints, I said earlier that I literally just bought the same brand of paint not too long ago. I bought Lamp Black and Alizarin Crimson. I think it was Alizarin Crimson. And I've used them already. I used the Alizarin Crimson on this. If you follow my Instagram, you probably would have seen this. But yeah, I used it on this one here. And yeah, so calling it good. I think it looks good. It's nice and delicate and fun. And usually with these art snacks, I say usually, but this is really my only my second box. But I like to kind of mark these with the little sticker that they give us. Since this is so tiny, I'm not going to stick it there. I'm going to stick it on the back. That way, I remember, because my memory does tend to suck a little bit. So I can... I'm not a letterer, so forgive my handwriting. February 2018. All right. There you have it. So I would say, like, if you're thinking about getting this subscription, I think it's worth it. It's $25, well, $24.95. It's free shipping. They give you everything, something similar to what you see here. This was considered a bonus item in the pack, which I guess if it is Arches paper, I can see how that would be considered a bonus. But yeah, so everything here, 25 bucks. These are typically like 10 bucks a piece. So it's worth it, I think, to do that. And it's a surprise. You never know what you're going to get. So that's kind of the fun part about it for me, is, you know, getting that surprise in the mail. And yeah, so that's that. And I will see you next time, and follow me next month. I'll open another box, but I also post twice a week right now anyway. Follow me on Sundays to watch any soap making tutorials, and then on Wednesdays for any kind of painting or art type of tutorial. I'm thinking about even making art supplies and giving a tutorial for that. But anyway, so that's that, and come join me on Sunday for a soap making video, and I will see you later. Bye!